Welcome to the Ashes to Wings podcast, where we tell stories of overcomers and give you tips and tricks to living a fuller, more embodied life. Here's your host, Jenny O'Connor.
Hey friends, welcome to Ashes to Wings. Today we'll be talking with Lindsey Oaks. With no money or prior experience, Lindsey Oaks moved 500 miles from her home at the age of 17 to pursue a career as a professional horse trainer. Over the next decade, she would learn how to become an entrepreneur the hard way while establishing herself as a competitor on the world stage and as a coach to aspiring equestrians. Lindsey now lives in the Chicago suburbs, spending her time teaching horse-crazy kids and adults to communicate effectively with 1,000-pound animals who don't speak English, and creating strategies for coaches, consultants, and influencers to communicate with the world. Her clients describe her as a coffee-addicted, high-energy smarty pants who tells stories to teach lessons. Lindsey, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. It sounds so much cooler when you say it like that.
We all need somebody to write our intros for us.
Amen. Thank you for having me today. I'm so excited.
Absolutely. So, Lindsey, you were an equestrian competitor, and I think most women want to be a horsewoman on some level. How did you get into competition?
Awkwardly, I would say. I wanted to be with horses from the time I was a little kid, and I think I just tell people that I was born with it. My best friend growing up also had horses, and I just was convinced that she would not appreciate the fact that she had them. And I just wanted to be just like her. And her parents, her whole family, did a lot of riding, and they were involved in equestrian sport. And I just dreamed from the time I was a kid about being involved with horses.
Mm.
So later on, I managed to get my foot in the door. I did own a couple horses as a young person and sort of worked my way through high school and that time of my life by playing with horses. But I never competed or did anything of any merit to make what I did next make any sense at all, which was that I decided I was going to be a horse professional and I was going to go to the Olympics.
With no experience.
With zero experience or understanding what in the world I actually was signing up for in starting that journey. I had
And,
not a clue.
and you were how old at that stage?
I was 17 when I left home. I just barely fresh out of high school. I was the youngest in my class, so I didn't quit high school to leave, but I certainly ran as fast as I could go. like a week after graduation, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to Kentucky now and I'm going to play with horses and I'll see you guys later. And my family bizarrely was like, okay. They were like, if this is what you want to do with your life, go right ahead. No one ever said this is maybe something we should think about a little harder before you go somewhere. They were like, if this is what you want to do with your life, we're fully supportive. Go right ahead. And off I went.
It's so fantastic that they were that supportive of your dreams, though.
It's amazing. My parents, and I've talked to them about this many times later in life, like, why did you think that that was okay? Like, why did no one say, Lindsey, this is probably not a great move for you. Maybe you should think about it a little more, go to school for a little while and see what's going on. Like, why would you guys get behind me? And my mom actually gave the coolest answer. She's like, look, when I was a kid, my parents told me what I was going to and what I was not going to do. And I felt a little held back in my dreams for a long time. And I didn't really have the guts to sort of just go around them and just do it. Because why would they stop you when you're in your 20s or 30s or whatever, right? But
Mhm.
she just said, look, I wasn't going to be that person for you. And if you wanted to go and do horses and you had no reason to think that you could, except that you wanted to, then I wasn't going to stop you. She's like, I was going to push you to wherever it was that you wanted to go. So I suspect that it doesn't really matter what kind of weird dream I came up with. They would have reacted the same way, but it's pretty mind blowing now in hindsight to think about. Like they would have been my age now when I was trying to leave home, and I just can't imagine letting my kid leave and just being like, "Yep, If that's what you're going to do, have fun.
It speaks to the trust that they had that you knew what you were doing, like, that you had that level of responsibility as a young adult.
Completely misplaced. I had no idea what I was doing.
You're like, "I have no idea why."
I still to this day, I have no clue why any of us thought that was a good idea, but it did work out in their favor eventually. So I went to Kentucky. If you don't have money or means, which I didn't, then one way that you can learn more about riding or sort of help yourself to the top of the sport or to reach whatever goal it is that you have is to become a working student. So, in the horse industry, working students make the world go round. Um, they're people who can't afford to pay, and so they work instead. So you can come, there's lots of ways to do it, but what I did was I moved into a house with four other girls who were running a farm, a bunch of young girls running a huge, massive farm with like 100
Wow.
horses. And I worked. I got up in the morning at 6 in the morning, and I started at maybe 6:30 in the barn, and we worked until 7 or 8 at night. And then we got up and we did it the next day. But it wasn't work for us because we're all horse crazy, and that's all we wanted to do was get our hands dirty and play with horses. And what we got out of that was an education in what it took to have a business in horses. So that's kind of how that works, and that's what I did for the first, couple of years, 2 or 3 years.
Mhm.
I did work other working student stints, that were smaller and not like a 24/7-hour deals later on in life, but that was my first one for sure. When I got there, the lady who I was working for had one horse that she had decided was gonna be her next big upper level up and coming horse. But this horse had a major flight response. So horses being prey animals, the prey, right? Tigers and lions eat them. When they're afraid or when they think that a lion is going to eat them, they run. That's their flight response. It's a natural response in them. And this horse had a very, very, very strong flight response.
Mm.
And so he got himself into trouble by leaving situations that he didn't need to be leaving. And he eventually dumped the rider, the trainer that I was working for, and she got really hurt actually. She
Mm.
she wasn't hospitalized or anything like that, but she was down for a few days. And she said, "You know what? This is not the horse for me. I'm not young. I don't want to play this game. Let's just get him sold." And I was like, "Oh, I need an opportunity. I'm willing to hit the ground.
I can fix him.
I can fix it. It's called horse whispering, and
Yeah.
all little girls can do it. I saw in the movies."
Yes. I watched a movie once.
I watched a movie one time, and it's possible. I know. So I convinced her, and I convinced my parents, and I convinced a couple of other family friends that I could fix this horse, and we were going to go all the way to Olympics, and it was going to be amazing. All we needed to do is buy the horse, and within a couple of years, we would all be successful. And I did manage to convince them, and we did manage to buy the horse, which is an amazing success itself. But what I did not understand is that I wasn't going to horse whisper this horse into being an Olympic horse. um, it took a long time to sort of develop something, and I got to learn a lot of lessons, life lessons in failure and hitting the ground and communication, all these fun life lessons that I didn't intend to learn
So the horse
along
was
the
a people
way.
whisperer.
The horse was a people whisperer, actually, is how that went.
Being able to buy this horse, you talk about your tribe often and how supportive they were. How were they influential in your success?
They were amazing. I Somehow, it's just amazing that they would buy into these ideas. Like when I talk about my parents being supportive of me leaving, I just think it's crazy when I think about it now. And again, if I think about like, because I would have been 18 when we bought this horse, if I picture an 18-year-old walking up to me and saying, "Okay, we need to get $10,000 together. We're going to buy this horse and we're going to go to the Olympics." And just like the craziness of it all Like, if I picture me coming to me for money for that, I would write that kid off immediately. There's no way. So, like, I don't even know why these people believed in me. But it's amazing what happens when you get people together, push towards a common purpose,
Mm,
right? All of a sudden, shared resources can become a huge amount of resources that one person or two people couldn't have come up with. Or when you are problem solving and you have something that needs to be solved, how do I get from point A to point B? Six people, seven people can come up with a good idea for you. And between the six of you, they can get you to where you need to go. But you can't do that by yourself. Like 18-year-old Lindsay couldn't have done that without all of these people along the way.
mm,
I had, two people that helped me buy that horse, one person that bought into the horse later as we were going on very little results. Like this was like 4 years in and things were going okay. And I was like, I just need, X amount of money to get to one more place and one more competition and we'll be qualified for this. And, 4 years down the road, we're going to the Olympics. Like still living the Olympic dream. And this guy's like, okay, I'm ready. Let's do it. Like it's crazy. But between all of us, we did make a lot of that happen. I never did make it to the Olympics, but
mm,
that horse did make it to a high performance training team and he did make it around the toughest event in North America. Like he did make it to the top. He made it to the height that the Olympics are run on. So those people helped. Eventually, I had a groom that sort of took over a lot of the day to day care of that horse and some other ones that I had coming up and just part of that business. And she changed my life. Like being able to hand off the care of that horse to one person who was going to know him inside and out. We called her his slave because she was just like his person. If he needed something, she knew it before I did.
mm,
And that was so much more helpful than me trying to know everything about him and everything about myself that I would know. Being able to hand that off to someone else allowed me to focus on other parts of the business to, pay for all of this or to focus on other parts of his training and things like that, where just one person just can't do that. And really, it makes the ending so much sweeter. Like, once you get to that place, why would you want to celebrate alone?
mm.
It's
Yeah.
so much better to do it with a team around you. And when a whole bunch of people come together to make something happen, it's just that feeling is something that you can't buy. You can't buy that.
Mm. And I love that life lesson of, just thinking as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, being able to delegate, being able to hand things off to people who are more skilled in that area so you can focus on the bigger picture and that that creates a much bigger result than anything that you could have ever done on your own. We spoke earlier about the competition that you did make it to. And I know, zero about horse scoring,
Yeah.
equestrian scoring, but you were mentioning that it's actually stricter standards than the Olympics.
Yeah, so the Olympics are run just a tiny level under that standard, simply because you have a lot of countries being represented for first time horses and riders at that level, and the competition is basically a triathlon for horses. It's called eventing. And one of the phases of eventing, day two, is called cross country day. And you and the horse gallop across several miles of terrain at breakneck speeds over jumps, logs, and into water and out of water and over ditches and things that don't move. So you can hurt yourself if you're not careful.
Mm,
Um, so the Olympics are run just a little bit lower than that because they want to make sure that people who are getting introduced to that level for the first time, if their first time is at the Olympics, don't hurt themselves. Like no one
mm,
wants to get hurt and walk away like that. So yeah, it's a pretty big deal. I will say, the first time that we went, we were not successful. So, in addition to like bringing people along with you, um, realize that you're not always going to make it the first time, and
mm,
that's okay. Failure is sort of part of the journey, right?
mm,
Like bring people along with you on the journey, but also realize that nothing ever works out like a fairy tale. Like you're not going to horse whisper horses to the Olympics. But if you are willing to learn from your mistakes, you can go and compete at a very, very high level and do really well and be successful. So,
Absolutely. I think it's
yeah,
incredible that you were able to take a horse that was basically being written off and get him to a national competition. That's mind-blowing. That's amazing. And to do it with the support of a group of people. I think it's such an amazing underdog story.
it
Oh,
is. He was such an underdog. He still is. He always was from the beginning because he wasn't like everyone else,
mhm.
right?
So, what do you wish you had known, looking back at 17-year-old Lindsay, who is ready to take on the world and do all these things? What do you wish you had known at that age when you first started this?
The first one is bringing along people for the journey. You can't make it there by yourself. And it took me a long time to intentionally build a tribe. Like, you bring people along by necessity or you bring people along because you need something from them. But at some point, you learn that you need to bring people along just for the sake of having camaraderie and having people in your court and being able to support them in the same way that they're supporting you. Like, that's just maybe a little more mature way to look at that.
Mm,
And then the second thing is that you're going to fail. And again, we just touched on that. Fail intelligently, fail in a way that you can learn from. So when you make a mistake or something goes wrong, like we did when we went to Rolex for the first time, Rolex is the competition that we were talking about. That's what it's called. Um, the first time we went, my horse, I didn't anticipate him being turned on by the crowds. So it
mm.
was sort of the biggest crowd that we had ever seen on cross country day. There are 30,000 people packed into that stadium watching you. And so 30,000 people are very loud.
Oh,
And
yeah.
he was very flighty. And so he left, except that the farther we went, the more people there were. And so about 9 minutes into galloping cross country, I had to stop him and retire from the competition because I physically could just not stop him any longer. Like, he was no longer under control. He was
Yeah,
not under my control. And then things become dangerous because he doesn't know what to expect next, right?
sure.
So, when we left, I actually like tried to quit riding. I was like, I just don't want to do this anymore. I tried to sell the horse, but no one was interested in buying a maniac.
Oddly enough.
Weird. Like, you don't see potential in this lunatic. So I tried to sell the horse, and it sort of took me a good 6 months to like pout it out, get over myself a little bit, right? And then it just sort of came back to, okay, you're still qualified, you still have the horse. Is the fire still there? Well, yes. Okay, then let's talk about what happened. And it took a long, long time for me to get to that place. So it's okay if it takes you a long time too. But the first thing that I would say is ask yourself exactly what went wrong. Like, be specific. What went wrong? My horse went a little nuts in the cross country and was running off with me. Identify why that happened. The reason why is because I had no idea that the crowds would affect him the way that they did, and so I was totally unprepared in that situation to deal with what happened. And then you've got to decide whether or not you can fix it. Sometimes you can't fix it. Sometimes it's something that happens and you go, you know what, this is out of my control. There's nothing I can do to solve that issue. And then you can walk away being okay with that, right? You don't have to go, I failed and I got to beat myself up for the next millennia because I suck at life. It's not what it is. It's something that's out of your control that can't be fixed, or something that you didn't foresee that you can't fix, you can't solve. And then you go, okay, it's all right for me to walk away here. But if you can identify something that can be fixed, for that horse, I could change his equipment. I could put something over his ears, like a covering, so that he couldn't hear the crowds the same way. I can improve that situation going forward. And so we did. We went back and did that. But what we didn't do was go, well, is it going to be hard? The unknowns, what ifs, what if this happens? What if that happens? If you're going to approach it that way, then you're probably setting yourself up to fail again. So look at it a little bit logistically and figure out whether or not that's something that can be done. And sometimes you have to give it a little time and step outside of yourself, which is what I had to do.
Yes.
But we
Yes.
did go back, and the second time we were very successful because we had a new plan.
So it sounds like it's not so much about where you end up as it is about the journey. So what advice would you give for enjoying the journey?
Mm. We spend so much more time on the journey than we do arriving. And then once we arrive, we set a new goal or we have a new thing and we go on another journey. And then we have to go and wait until we arrive again to celebrate. And I think that that's a little backwards. If we don't find ways to celebrate or to enjoy the act of getting there, we'll never be happy. I know this was a lesson that I learned a little bit late in life. It took me a long time to get to that place because I was a very driven person from early on. It took me failing at a very high level to realize that I had given myself no grace on in a 7-year period to getting to that place. The whole time, I could not be happy until I made it to Rolex. And 7 years is a long time to be that hard on yourself and to be unhappy. And had I not failed at a massive level, I don't know that I would have learned that. Had I reached the top and won Rolex and done all the things, maybe I would have believed it was worth it, but then I would have had to go on another journey to realize that that's such a small amount of time to celebrate. That lesson wouldn't have set in, I guess is what I'm trying to say. So when you're on the journey, set smaller goals within your bigger goals. Set up little places where you can go, I did this and I won. Make sure that you acknowledge the times that you're successful. You can acknowledge the times that you're not too, but it's so much more important to give yourself those little wins so that you can make this long journey worth it, because otherwise it won't be worth it to you to get to the top. Once you get there, it won't taste nearly so sweet. It's just going to be one more stepping stone to the next one.
Isn't it amazing how life teaches us lessons one way or another? And I feel like we almost learn the best lessons through our failures.
It's almost always best learned the hard way. Anything giving to you easily can be taken for granted. Like any of those lessons, had I won my first time around and it been super easy and all of that paid off, I would not have come away with the same attitude. I never could have learned that, but only through the act of having that really blow up in my face in front of 30,000 people and then spend 6 months brooding over it. Could I go, oh, this wasn't it? No one in my tribe was as disappointed as I was.
Mm,
They were just thrilled to be there. They couldn't believe what we had accomplished.
mm.
And looking back now, it's amazing that we got as far as we did. We took that horse so much further than he ever should have gone, and yet for a very long time I didn't see that. All I could see was how I didn't make it as far as I wanted to go.
Mm.
But when you look at the numbers, I mean, the amount of horses that are meant to be on that stage that make it are so few. There's something like 100 advanced horses in the nation at any given time. That's the level that he was competing at. And that horse never should have made it to that level in the first place.
So, Lindsay, what do you think the biggest lesson is you've learned from working with horses?
I think the biggest lesson that horses have taught me is how to communicate. How you say it matters. And this is something that my mom taught me actually as a little kid. She said this to me all the time is you can say whatever you want just as long as you say it right. And when you talk to a horse, if you walk in with really square shoulders and you look him in the eye, that's aggressive. And even if you say something nice to him in that tone, he's going to assume that you're being aggressive. And people are the same. If your words and your tone don't match, um, it doesn't work. You have to be a little more consistent and be mindful of the way that you say things. I think that's the most important lesson that horses have taught me.
Mm, that's so great. The body language is so powerful. And I've read studies on how, if you say one thing and your body language says the opposite, we just instinctively pick up on the body language, and that's the message that we're going to go with.
Yeah.
It hits on that primal level.
It makes us not trust whatever's coming out of the person's mouth, even if they're not lying to you or being distrustful. It just makes you automatically step back and put up a shield.
Hmm. So how did you transition from working with horses to helping people with their personal brand? Because I know you own Lindsey Oaks personal branding.
Me too. It's communication. I'm glad that we touched on this. Communication with horses has been my life's journey. And a few years ago, I started a photography business. I've played with cameras my whole life, and I really began to help service-based entrepreneurs to communicate visually. They needed photos for their website and for their social media and different things like that. But I realized that a lot of those people were not utilizing my photos in a really effective way. They were not communicating well. And so I just last year launched a whole new suite of services around branding strategy and helping people to identify their visual identity, their verbal identity, how they talk to people, and how they visually talk to people, and the value that they present to them, so that all of those things align. And through consistency, you build a trustworthy brand. And so people are just automatically attracted to you when you're consistent and you have a very clear vision about what you're offering people.
If a book was written about your life, what would the title be?
Do it now and don't think enough to change your mind.
That's so good. That's so
I'm an
good.
action taker. And I just had a conversation about this with someone this morning. And she was like, "You just take action. You don't care about the details." And I said, "No, I take action now, so I can't change my mind."
Brilliant.
Do it. Do it right now.
Jump in. I love that. Lindsey, our podcast is called Ashes to Wings, referring to the story of the phoenix transforming and rising from the ashes. I like to ask all of our guests this question: what does rise above mean in your life?
To rise above is to do it anyway, even when you're scared, even when the timing isn't right, even when you feel unprepared, or when you feel that the world doesn't want you to do whatever that thing is. It's to do it anyway. Don't wait for the timing to be right. Don't wait to be less scared. You won't be less scared. Do it still. Do it while you're scared. Do it while the timing isn't right. Do it while the things aren't going well. If it's worth doing, it's worth doing badly.
So good. Lindsey, I always like to leave our listeners with a bumper sticker statement. So, a short summary of what we just talked about that would fit on a bumper sticker. What would your statement be?
I would say invest in the journey instead of the outcome. It takes years to become an overnight success.
So good. So good. And so true, as all entrepreneurs know.
Amen.
So, I have a few rapid fire fun questions for you here. Yes.
Okay, I'm ready.
Who would play you in a movie?
Anne Hathaway.
Ooh, yeah. All right. What technology do you wish existed?
The ability to put words back in my mouth.
Yes,
I'm to just grab them out of the air, shove them back down my throat.
you would be a billionaire. All the awkward people said, yes, please.
Yeah, hands up.
Love it. What are your favorite pizza toppings?
Mm, sausage, pepperoni, mushrooms, green onions. I feel like there's something else. Pineapples.
Ooh,
Yeah.
in that combination?
All of them. Just put them all together.
I have not tried that. Nice.
Magic.
What book belongs on everyone's bookshelf? I was like, I see we have one there.
Developing the leader within you. Every person should learn how to lead themselves and others.
Very nice. And this is my favorite one. What is your guilty pleasure song?
Guilty pleasure song?
So like windows down, driving down the expressway, singing at the
It's
top of your lungs.
definitely something by Taylor Swift because I'll never admit to anyone else that I'm a Swiftie.
So don't tell her secret.
So don't tell anyone except everyone listening to this podcast.
It's too funny because you're my second Swiftie fan. That's too funny. Yeah.
Don't tell anybody.
She's far-reaching. Lindsey, I know you have an offer for our Ashes to Wings listeners. Tell us about that.
I do. It's a tutorial on how to write effective social media posts without pulling your hair out. A lot of the people that I work with want to be able to show up more effectively online because someone said you should post on Facebook to have a better business, but they don't actually know what they're trying to accomplish with that. So this will tell you what you're trying to accomplish with that and how to get the engagement that you're looking for without just losing your mind and spending 6 hours on every post.
That's so useful. I know as a multi-business owner, I have to hand off a lot of it because it gets overwhelming. There's so many different channels. And so to have somebody like yourself come in and say, okay, here's how to do it is what a great offer. Thank you for that.
Yeah, you're so welcome. It can be a real pain if you have no idea why you're doing it. Like you're just trying to accomplish something and you don't really know. That happens all the time. So have a strategy.
Yeah, and have a purpose behind it.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find the link for that offer along with Lindsey's social media links on her guest page on our website. That's ashestowings.net/Lindsey, LINDSEY-Oaks, OAKS. Make sure you give her a follow. Lindsey, thank you so much for joining us today. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to be in front of your audience and tell my story. I so appreciate it. I love it. Thank you.
Absolutely. So just to recap our episode and talk about a few of our takeaway points that Lindsey covered today, there were so many great little nuggets in here. No one makes it to the top alone. Invest in relationships, build your tribe, fail intelligently. Failure is a part of the journey and oftentimes what teaches us our biggest lessons. We spend so much time on the journey and so little actually arriving at our destination. Spend energy celebrating small wins along the way. Enjoy the act of getting there. And then her bumper sticker statement was, invest in the journey instead of the outcome. It takes years to become an overnight success. This was such a powerful episode that fits so nicely with our values at Ashes to Wings. Building your tribe, embracing and learning from failure, and celebrating your wins. I hope this helps you learn how to love your journey a bit more today. Don't forget to check out Lindsey's guest page. Again, that's ashestowings.net/Lindsey-Oaks. Friends, thank you for listening. Don't forget to follow the show, rate, and review. See you next time.
Thanks for listening. The best way to learn is to teach someone else. So take one thing you learned today and share it with a friend. Find Jenny on Instagram at @the_Jenny_O'Connor and online at jennyo'connor.com. Subscribe for new episodes. Until next time, rise above.